Hello, welcome to Pod Mavericks Mavs Party. I'm Kirk Henderson. I'm editor-in-chief over at MavsMoneyball.com. It has been far too long since I've hosted one of these, far too long since I've done one of these by myself, so it's probably going to be a bit rusty. I like having somebody to talk with, but I was having a slow work day, and that, coincided with Media Day, which also happened today with the Dallas Mavericks, and so here I am. So for those of you who maybe have forgotten, there is a posted link in the comments, which allows you to click in, and you can come up here once I bring you up as part of the show. We can talk a little hoops. You can ask me some questions or just fire off any takes that you are interested in, and I think we can have a little fun here. It's about 3:00 on Friday the 29th of September. Training camp's been going on for 3 days, and we will just get to chatting. So if I see you join, the link down there in the comments, again, it's this link. I'll post it one more time. You can come up here and hang out. In the meantime, I will sort of soliloquy or post a soliloquy for a while. And I, got an email in from listener Michael Rowe, and he had some questions for me. He said, much has been made of the offseason by Nico Harrison, Michael Finley, and their staff, and for good reason. There has been much enthusiasm about Luka's potential for starting the season in tip-top shape, though the lingering leg issue is a cause for concern. And all that is the reason for encouragement, but what about the elephant in the room? What should we expect from Jason Kidd and his evolution as a coach this season? Will the fact that the roster features more defensive-oriented players rejuvenate him and reduce his passive-aggressive behavior? Will he discover that he can't carry over unused timeouts from one game to the next? Will he take any accountability whatsoever? Will he prove he can do more than develop young players and make an actual difference in live game situations via adjustments or calling plays? This is what I fear the most about the upcoming season, despite how encouraged I am about their roster changes. This is a fun question just because it plays to my grumpiness. It's very funny. Today, during Media Day, Tim Hardaway seemed surprised that he might be coming off the bench and said, you're going to have to talk to Jason Kidd about that. Really an entertaining exchange because this is the second training camp in a row where whether dudes are starting or not is a point of thought. But Tim Hardaway Jr., he's been with the team for a real long time now. Not really too worried about Timmy, just something that made me laugh. The Jason Kidd of it all is very difficult, because I think that in order to keep Kyrie Irving engaged, Jason Kidd is extremely important to the team. And all these things are all interchanged. And Jason Kidd is, not my favorite coach. I've called for him to be fired last year, but he's not going anywhere. That's sort of what I've come to the conclusion on. It's going to take the Mavericks really having a poor start to the year for Jason Kidd to go. And it would take like the kind of poor start where they're 10 games under 500, 30 to 35 games into the season, like something really, truly catastrophic. And even then, I don't know if Mark Cuban would do it. Mark Cuban is very stubborn. He believed in Kidd and gave Kidd a chance when I don't necessarily think Kidd was ever going to get another head coaching job again. Kidd's an interesting one. He's definitely... he says things. Josh Bowe mentioned that on the last show. The Kidd actually says things out loud, and he's not boring. And there's a lot to that in terms of us being, people that are constantly thinking about the Mavericks. We're not parsing words with Kidd. He says things that he means. So that's particularly interesting to me. So I like this question, Michael, please fire them away. The more anybody that has any questions, obviously I see some of these questions in the chat, but if you're listening on the podcast later on, or if you are watching the show later on YouTube, there is a email, podmaverickpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send me any questions if you just want to talk hoops. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that we talk about on the show. If you have any questions about me, anything like that, I'm always happy to answer. We've got our first guest who wants to come up here. My man, Leo, who is still behind an avatar. Leo doesn't believe in letting me see what I just have to assume is handsome face. Leo, what's going on today?
I don't have any good lighting in my room, so a good camera would be almost impossible.
I understand that. I have a face for radio, so I understand what you mean.
But as far as maybe like starting off on a good note, as far to bring up the vibes, what did you think of the interviews given by our rookies? I like the maturity of our two rookies,
We're
just
great.
in the way they talk about like how their coaches are taking them under their wing, and how D Live is coming in after practice with Sham got to work on his handle. I don't think we've ever heard that from we haven't heard that from other rookies. They don't normally talk about it.
We don't get rookies. We're not allowed to have rookies. At least rookies in the sense of, Brunson comes in, national champion, Luka, like worldwide phenom. Josh Green came in during the COVID year, which doesn't, his whole thing was just so different than everybody else's. Hardy's the second round guy, so you don't really have high expectations for him, but rookies that are, we're hopeful that they come in and participate early. Like there's something, it's exciting. I'm very, bullish about all this. It's funny. Isaac Harris and I probably disagree on like 70% of basketball stuff, but like we both are super into Omax, and I just couldn't be more excited about Omax. The Lively is a little more interesting because I think his range of outcomes is a lot more varied, just because big men have harder roles. But it's great to see how enthusiastic they both seem. And it's, having a Luka Doncic and a Kyrie Irving really sets like a pecking order in terms of team hierarchy. And it establishes guys for what is expected of them. So Lively's talked about his role for a real long time. And Chris Vernon of The Ringer used a phrase I hadn't heard in quite some time, but I really liked hearing it again. And it made me think about the Dallas Mavericks young players, and that you can be a star in your role. And that is something I am hopeful for one or both of these guys. And I think it really is going to dictate on what the Mavericks ceiling is. I feel pretty good about the floor because, we like a lot of the guys that are on the team already. And in the rotation, we kind of know what a lot of the guys have to offer. And so it's the ceiling. And so, to answer your question, it's delightful. Training camp is the last time we're really allowed to be. I mean, you can be like this all the time if you want. A friend of the show, Dalton Trigg, is like this all the time. But if you want to be like exuberantly bullish and positive about this team, now is the time and you're fully justified in feeling that way.
Well, as far as you were talking the pecking order, we didn't have that last year because we kept on thinking, who's number 2? Is it Christian Wood? Is it Spencer? And we kept on lamenting the fact that JB walked, because if not, it would have been a clear point where it's like, it's Luka, it's JB, and it's everybody else. Just like after we traded KP away, whenever Spencer came in, he himself said it. He's like, I've already know it's Luka, it's Brunson, and then it's me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really missed that last year because it was such an awkward conversation whenever players would go up talking about how their roles are undefined, or whenever we'd have these conversations online where it's like, well, what are we expecting out of these guys? Because I don't think they know what they're supposed to do either.
And that's, I think, some of that is on coaching. Some of that is on, the Mavericks had such a poor offseason the summer prior. Everything was just shaky and up in the air. And it's really, you try to be positive when you head into a season. We all do. We all love watching Luka. We all love watching the Mavericks. But we talked ourselves into a lot. Now, you could make the argument that we're doing the same thing right now, but it's so drastically different this year. At least the roster is different. So maybe this is all copium, and maybe the Mavericks are going to be a garbage team again. there's enough here for me to latch onto. And since I'm so pessimistic about everything else, I don't know. I just feel like that's worth something because I just rarely get hyped like that.
Well, as far as my copium take, I think we finally have a center that's going to replace Dwight Powell because our center knows his role and understands that his role is to rebound and help Luka whenever in the role. That's it. That's Dwight Powell. We got Dwight Powell at 7'2". I'm happy with that.
Roll man stuff is tough too. It was the first day of training camp. Obviously, Luka media trained, paired with kind of a quieter guy, and Luka had, I don't know, there's something, again, you're reading body language, but the look on Luka's face when he's talking about him as a role man and kind of like the couple first day connection that they have, that was really neat. I liked that. And JaVale, Willie, some of the guys the Mavericks have had over the years, DeAndre Jordan, it's just, I don't remember that outside of Dwight. I guess Christian Wood and he had it because Christian Wood was a special offensive player, but it's just a different situation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kirk.
Sure, man. Thanks for coming up. Okay. Coming up next, we have my friend from across the world, Andreas. Andreas, welcome back to the show. What's going on?
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a great pleasure and honor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, you got to join while you can because when I start doing these in the season, you're asleep. So at least I hope you're asleep because otherwise you'd be up all night.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes, and as a family man, sometimes there are responsibilities.
That's right.
Yeah, and sometimes I do join some games here overnight as well. Obviously, different time zone and everything, like some other fans from overseas, obviously. So again, thanks for having me.
Sure.
Watched a little bit of YouTube, guy like I am, and I saw something on the 9th, which I found very interesting. Was it the Old Man and the Three with JJ Redick? I think it was. And he said some interesting things, I think, with some guests. And he pointed out two things which I want to repeat here and get your take on it, if you don't mind.
Of course.
And he said for the Mavericks, from what I understood, obviously, right, is he said you need to have ball, a guy who picks up the lead guy with the ball, and he thinks that will be Green, but he has, I don't want to say doubts, but he's not sure if Green can do that for 82 games. And I found that interesting because obviously everybody grows with his or her responsibilities.
Yep.
And we have guys like Exum, we have guys like Omax, obviously. We have other guys I find very interesting and intriguing. And I am happy that I've been proven wrong in terms of Matisse Faibo with the FIBA, and so tip to the head, you were right on that one. So as far as we can tell, right? Yep. So on that one, do you think how we are positioned right now with what's the word for it? The guy who picks up the lead ball handler, right?
Point of attack defender.
Thank you.
Is what I have been.
Yeah.
So this is I think it's going to be very matchup dependent because if you're playing a guy like the guy who always comes to mind who used to just kill Dallas on point of attack was the recently traded Damian Lillard. And Luka's first 2 years, like I remember they kept losing to Portland in really frustrating fashion because Dame was incredible. And the Mavericks would put Dorian Finney-Smith on him. And Dorian Finney-Smith is a good defender who is really, really chaotic off ball. Like he's kind of a guy who's in the passing lanes, but like I don't think of him as a man-to-man stopper, but he was the best the Mavericks had. Yeah. I think that Josh is probably, and I've said some things on recent shows where I've had some debates with people, and I think I'm just not expressing myself clearly. I think Josh is a fine defender. I think he gets miscast into being a wing stopper when I think he is much better guarding smaller players because he's strong.
I can see that, and he's determined. And from what I understood from recent hours or days, is that he really would like to see. I think I read that on the website, of course, is that he sees himself in that role and he really wants to excel in this role, from what I understood. And yeah, that's something. And you just spoke about this with the other guests, and I think that's what I got from the email as well. We have a lot of leaders in their role. They take pride in being good in their role. I like that about this team particularly. I'm very excited about that. So second thing which was pointed out, so thank you very much for that take, is rim protection. And I think that was just brought up right now. And he said that's what the Mavs obviously been missing since Tyson Chandler left. And but since we don't have to put the guys in we had last year, I'm very excited. And this is something where I just briefly want to pivot to is Tyson was on also
All the Smoke.
podcast.
We didn't cover this. It was the All of the Smoke podcast. The one
All right,
with
Matt Barnes, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. And Steven Jackson.
Right.
We didn't cover it in Mavs Moneyball because I don't. At a certain point in the summer, I just stopped making people do stuff. I stopped being the asshole editor. That's by the way, if you're listening, Mavs Moneyball staffers, I'm back, so it's time to get to work. But yeah, go ahead.
Here you go. No, and from how he was talking, Tyson, and what I understood from Derek on other podcasts as well, I think there was a Duke-focused one as well up just recently, which I watched as well. That was very interesting. And they speak very similarly. There's very like-minded people from what I get. And from what I understood from what their history is, before they became a successful player in the NBA, they are very similar in that regard. Sleeping, I think, both in the car or both being homeless or being having rough times from what I understood. And remember, I hope I don't get this wrong. So I think they will bond very well, and having a good mentor, just looking at Dirk, is obviously very important. And I have very high hopes on Derek, and I think he will surprise us all. And in my opinion, rim protection, at least for maybe even from the start of the season, won't be too much of an issue. What's your take on this?
It really so a lot of thoughts. It really depends on what kind of lineups they decide to throw out there. Because one of the problems that Dallas ran into last year, as we all saw, was size. We as Mavs fans are sort of like the collective. Maybe not anybody in here, maybe some people in here. I think everybody misunderstands what Grant Williams will bring. If he's expected to play 4 and Dwight Powell starts at 5, that is once again a small Dallas Mavericks team. If you start Josh Green, because Grant is 6'5", 6'6", maybe. Okay, him and Tim Hardaway standing next to each other, and Tim Hardaway is taller, like that sort of thing. That's okay, because it's not necessarily about being tall. It's about how you play and how you use your body. But let's not lie, being tall is extraordinarily helpful in the basketball sense if you're good at it. So I'm curious, like the rim protection, I think might be an issue early on. But here's where here's why I said I have a lot to respond to. There's another podcast, if you really like long basketball podcasts, Sam Vicini, who works for The Athletic, runs a show called the Game Theory Podcast. It's very long. He is based out of Australia, and he covers some Australian basketball down there, but he used to be up here in the United States, and I've known him for years. And he held a show with another friend of mine, a guy named Robbie Calland, who does all sorts of sports at a website called Uprocks. But Robbie used to specifically cover basketball, and they like talking gambling. Robbie said something about Derek Lively that made me laugh, where he said, I only saw Derek Lively from March on. He said, I didn't see early season Derek Lively, and I thought Derek Lively was one of the best players in the country. So to answer like if we're looking at basketball, the season holistically, this is like part of the problem where like all the things have to be answered right now. The team that the Mavericks have, and one thing I have to give Jason Kidd credit for that I think he's done well, he did very well in his first season, is you don't approach the season as one big chunk of games. You approach it in smaller doses and figure out how to improve, where to move, like where are you doing well, where do you need to do better, what lineups might work in certain situations, how are injuries affecting the team. And I think what we'll see, and what I hope we'll see, because I did this with Jaden Hardy, and then to a certain extent, and Josh Green during Josh Green's year under Jason Kidd, is a progression where players are put in the position to succeed in small roles. Because I think confidence for younger players is so important. And even if you're a professional athlete, you know, it becomes very few players can go out and shake off hard times. Luke Byrne in the chat, I think, has said twice that Lively will start. I kind of think he's right, just because there's no harm. If Lively plays the first 8 minutes of every half and then maybe some situational stuff, he might get up to 20. Like, that'd be huge for me in the Mavericks. Yeah. So I'm just there's a lot to you have to assume, because these guys are professionals, that they have a plan. It's what is the plan once reality sets in, and can you adjust that plan in accordance to what you're seeing and have facing as a basketball team? I think part of what frustrated us about Jaden Hardy last year is we all thought Jaden Hardy was ready to go and he could help. And just didn't do that. I don't think they'll have a choice with Derek Lively. If Derek Lively looks good and is helpful, he's going to force himself onto the court by his play.
Yeah, and I hope this will happen. Thank you very much for that. That's insightful. So I think we are all in a very similar opinion there. Let's see. That pivots. If you allow me to ask one more question. If you don't
sure, no, you can. Like, we don't have anybody here. It's still the off season, I think. for you know, we got 50 live viewers, which is fine. I mean, in the season we'll get a couple hundred, but right now, hey, we're just having fun.
Cool, thank you. So again, thanks for that. About that 82 part you just mentioned, I hoped still that he doesn't tinker too much, because as we've seen last time, where for crying out loud, who was that guy we got off a market mid-season, and we put him in, already forgot his name, instead of Josh. I think that was quite a bummer for his confidence. There was too much tinkering. Once I get over the line, I'll remember his name.
That's okay. That happens to me all the time.
Anyway, so we have, I think, 15 players on the roster.
Sorry.
Holiday. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Very good. That's him exactly. Holiday it was. We have Markieff Morris obviously on the team, and I think about your point with the size, this is the guy I thought of, because he is not super tall, but he, I think, brings a little bit of size with him, obviously. And with the Mavericks not being super tall, I think that was one attribute Mavs might have looked at. Maybe. I'm still baffled about that, but anyway, what do you think? Who will take this 15th spot? Because according to my count, that will be either Mike Miles Jr. or that will be Markieff Morris. Something's going on there.
Pretty sure Mike Miles is on a two-way.
Yeah.
So that will allow them to shuttle him back and forth from their developmental team in Frisco. There's a limit to the number of games, but that'll be part of it. But the Morris question is worth leaning into, because Morris's contract, as I have seen it discussed, is they can just move on from him if they want to. And I think what they'll do is they'll head into the season with what they have right now, because they're not in the Drew Holiday discussion. Just so everyone, Drew Holiday is apparently going for at least 2 first-round picks. Dallas doesn't have 2 first-round picks. And so it's like they might be able to make it in the buyout season, and they do, I believe. Mavs CBA might be able to correct me on this, but I think they have a little bit of their mid-level exception left going into the year, to where they could do, if there was a buyout guy they liked, they might be able to outbid someone if money was a factor. So that's part of it, but buyout guys ultimately don't really matter. I will say that I feel better about their 10 through 15 guys, like those portions of the bench, than I have in a long time.
Same here, and I'm very confident about this, and about the bench, and about being a strong team and playing together. If you allow me to shift to FIBA real quick, Obviously, I'm very proud of the Germans winning the whole thing. Yay. I didn't really see that coming. I was very confident, and I did it as a team. Basketball. That's what it is about.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of them that they came together and did this. I'm still baffled, and the whole nation went bonkers. And there are not the biggest towns in Germany, but smaller towns which are very strong when it comes to basketball, very strong-minded. Small towns like Göttingen, or there are a lot of them, and they went absolute bonkers. It was really cool to see the nation just celebrating this. That was really nice. And I have to give a shout out to Serbia, because they really fought very well without the best player. Jokic,
Incredible basketball country, Serbia.
Really, it's not the biggest country in the world, obviously, and they fought so well, and really respect to them as well. I'm mightily impressed. I just wanted to get that off my chest.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Well, thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Right.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Too. Okay, so that's the extent of our guests that we have lined up. If you want to, you can click into the invite. I'll post the link again if you're interested in coming up here and talking ball with me. Otherwise, I'll answer a couple of questions from the chat, and then I think we might be able to head out. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about, I want to talk about the Damian Lillard trade. No one cares what I think, but I want to talk about it. I'll simply say that I am delighted for the second time, Kevin Durant's the other instance, where a superstar player that has signed a contract for several years to go with a ton of money on that contract. Management did not do what was best for the player and did what was best for the team. Damian Lillard's not my favorite player, just to be perfectly candid. I think he is a mite bit overrated and has benefited from a ton of positive coverage because he's an excellent guy with the media, actually answers questions and talks to players. Really fascinating guy. But it was too much for me all summer long. You shouldn't dictate where you get to go when you're also under contract for a ton of money. That said, he ended up in a great situation for him, which is really quite fascinating. I think the Bucks, he is a fantastic number 2 to Milwaukee up there in Giannis. And I can't wait to see how they play. And I'm grateful that he is not in the Western Conference anymore. And then the final thought on it is I think like if Luka was to ever leave the team, which I hope never happens, but it's basketball. What I don't want him to do is I don't want him to post a rap song, post an 8-page goodbye letter, and also leak out to local media basically a dictated story on how Portland was mean to him. This is too much, in my humble opinion. Just a few too many things is all. Like maybe one, not 3. So that was not my favorite. Just really wanted to do it. All right, hey, we got another guest who wanted to come in. Samo, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey. Welcome.
How are you today?
Hear me well?
I can.
Cool,
Thanks for joining.
Greetings from Slovenia.
Yes. Slovenia and Germany guests so far.
Thanks for doing this at the time appropriate for European listeners. It's much appreciated.
I try now and then. I really do.
Yeah, I have a small daughter, so I wanted to join for the whole season, but I couldn't manage because it's too late. But today I'm kind of free by accident, so I was happy to join in.
Well, happy to have you. What are you thinking today?
I'm just going to tell you a quick story because I think you're going to find it funny. Like, I started following the Mavs because of Luka, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
And like when I was searching for podcasts and so on, I started following like a lot of the Mavs podcasts. Mm-hmm. And I stumbled to like your podcast. And I was like, who is this grumpy guy and why is he just bitching all the time when things are going great? Like, the team is winning and he's just like kind of negative. And then the last season came and you immediately became my favorite podcast. And I listened to everything and I love it. I love the content that you and Josh Bower are doing. And yeah, you're not the grumpy old man anymore. You're quite right.
We'll see. You know, it's you know, a broken clock is right twice a day, and
True.
things just went really rough for Dallas last year, and I am impressed by how they have built off of. It was really bleak when the season ended. I mean, I was, you know, we do this for fun, more or less. I mean, we make a little bit of money, but it's mostly about fun. And I remember just kind of talking with Josh and being like, I'm not actually going to quit, but I kind of want to quit because this just wasn't very fun for the first time in a while. And all the things they did in the offseason, probably the most exciting offseason since they drafted Luka, easily. And it's just great. It's nice to have something to look forward to. I'm really looking forward to seeing the basketball get played, because one of the things that's kind of as I think back, we did not get Luka and Kyrie Irving played basketball together and were unbelievable together. But I also don't think we ever got Luka in really peak form. So what does that look like? You know, and I just to see these guys play offense together is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was not even enough time. It was just like basically 10 games, and then
Luka was hurt.
like
He was hurt. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't know. Do you have a question for somebody from Slovenia? I don't know, anything country related, Luka related, basketball related.
Okay.
I don't have any takes right now.
No, I do. I do need to know this, because this is something that I've gone back and forth a little bit about. Are there any on the rise Slovenian big men that might be able to contribute to the national team in the next 2 to 4 cycles?
Nah, the big man position is a huge problem. Like you already mentioned a couple of times that we are a phenomenon, not only in basketball but in sports. We have
And
really like
biking and all, like the Tour de France guy. What was his name? That was incredible.
Yeah, 2 of them actually.
2, gosh.
Yeah. So we're really good in sports, but when you know on the big man front, there it really shows like our lack of just people. You know, there's not, the pool is not big enough.
2 million
and
volume problem. Yeah.
Yeah, because you know, I've seen on Reddit like some debates on like why the European big men are sometimes like better than the US big men and so on. And you know, there are so few of them, and then when you get them, you really polish them. Like they get to, you know, really do the fundamentals. Like the footwork, I think is incredible in Europe, especially like the old school basketball, because it used to be, you know, especially here in the Yugoslavia, old Yugoslavian territory, you needed to get the fundamentals right. You needed to learn like 2-3 moves and then live on them for the whole career. So but it's hard. It's really hard, you know, to get big men with like 2 million people. We had, you know, like Nesterovic is the legend. He played like, I mean, he had a decent NBA career, and then he was like, you know, NBA starting center. But even him, like, it was never enough, basically. So no, I don't think that there's any on the rise. I might be wrong because I don't know the young selections so well.
Well, because there's some younger players. There's gosh, he's playing at UCLA this year out here in California. He's Slovenian. What is his name?
Yeah, I know which one you mean. I know we have really cool young players on the rise. I think like
Jan, isn't it Jan Vide? How do you say his Vide?
Yeah.
He's outstanding.
Yeah. And we have a couple of really promising young guys. But yeah. The big
well, I
just
think about that.
Problem,
I just think about it because, you know, one of the things that came up when Luka was ejected from the World Cup, in trying to put some context into that to people who didn't watch the games, one of the things I try to explain, and I'm not making excuses, I'm just saying I understand it. Luka has mentioned repeatedly how important being like trying to win one of these international tournaments is to him. And you only get so many opportunities, you know? That's why the 2017 Eurobasket thing was so incredible, because it was a little bit of a surprise, but runs like that just don't happen every 2 to 4 years.
They caught fire, yeah.
They caught fire. That's a great way to phrase it. And so he gets so like he's capable of winning games purely almost like by himself. And so I think he knows, and I could be wrong, but I think he knows that like every time when he sees a chance slipping away, it just drives him absolutely crazy. And it's very different than the NBA pettiness that he engages in sometime. And I think that we in America tend to just lump it all together as like an insecurity or immaturity thing. And I don't think that's necessarily fair to him. I don't want to make excuses for him, but he's going to want to come back next summer for the Olympic. I think the Olympic qualifiers are like some of the tournaments are like immediately after the NBA season is over. So he'll go from NBA to that, and then hopefully to Paris if Slovenia qualifies. And it's like these things are important to him, and I get why. It's incredible. Like the more you think about just the fact that like the Dallas Metroplex. Let me see how many people are here in Dallas. Dallas area population. This is great podcasting. The Dallas area population has 1.3 million people. That's just in the city of Dallas and not necessarily the surrounding area. So it's like when I explain to people that like, hey, this a country that has roughly the size of half of Dallas, it's like they're constantly getting far in these basketball tournaments and getting this close to medaling or winning. It's just really, it's really, I get it, is all I'll say. So,
and with Luka, I also saw it on Reddit, like the last comments that he made that he's gonna try. He knows he has a problem with the refs and everything, and that he's gonna try. And then people are like, I get it as a fan. I totally get it. Like, yeah, like same old story. It doesn't mean anything. Like you have to change. You have to grow up. But it's a part, as you mentioned, it's a part we already know now. It's a part of his character. You can't say, okay, Luka, you just like be stoic and focus on winning and don't bother with referees. It's part of the package. You get an amazing player, but part of the package is that he, likes to drink and eat sometimes, and that he's really temperamental. And we love it when we see the showboating. We love it like. All the like flair is amazing, but what comes with that is, as you mentioned, I think he gets really, really frustrated because I think in his mind he believes he can win every single game, even against like USA. He's gonna go out there and be like, we can win it. And every chance that slips away, you get I mean, there are a lot of tournaments, but still, it's.
Yeah, I just like it in the sense of he takes the responsibility of what he's doing and why he's playing and who he's playing for very seriously. Seriously. And that, with some of this bullshit that happens with NBA basketball and professional sports in general, there's just an element of like that pure pride that I find very appealing. So,
and also it's a difference because like in NBA you have 82 games plus then the postseason. It's just too many games, and I think also players are probably fed up with like constantly going through the grind and again starting the season, doing everything again. And while when you're playing in these tournaments, when it's single elimination, it gets amped up really quickly, and then as it starts slipping away, I also can totally understand that it gets to him. It's he just bursts out. But and it's really funny because we had in Slovenia some amazing teams in the past that were like a collection of, I don't know, 4 or 5 really good players, also NBA players. But there was never like a proper chemistry. It was never clear who was the leader. Basically, they were too good individually to work as a team. And now we have the total polar opposite, where we have like a clear leader, clear like best player, and the supporting cast is just like, close, but not quite there. And as you mentioned, the big men you saw like this year, I lost his name, like the main
Mike Toby.
Yeah, the Toby. He came injured. He was injured before the tournament and also during the tournament, and that's already like when you have games where every little thing counts, and when the margin against Canada, it was to win, not even everything had to go perfect. You had to catch fire, and every little single thing that went like sideways, it's just a margin that you cannot with such talent disparity, you cannot catch up. And
that's right.
Then the refs, it is what it is.
That was special. That really was special.
Exactly. But, if you watch basketball, then you know that you shouldn't bitch about the refs too much.
Because it just happens sometimes. That's right.
Yeah, and in soccer, I used to watch soccer a lot, and it was always like a saying, if you don't want the referee to screw you over, then just score like 2 more goals than the opponent, and that's it, or 3 more goals. So it's the same here,
Yep.
It's hard, but yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining.
Cool.
And I will, if there are more day games this year, which I think there always are, I'll try to do these a little earlier. I am basically checking my work email while still doing this. I just was having a slow, I shouldn't be doing this. And one day I'm going to get in actual trouble with my job for doing this, but whatever. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Yeah, awesome. I'll be happy to come again.
All right.
Take
Great
care.
talking to you. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Now we got one more guy. Love this. Frank has been waiting for about 10 minutes. So Frank, I'm going to bring you on up here. Frank, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Sitting in beautiful DFW standstill traffic. So I figured I'd chime in. I'm kind of directionless too. I was sitting here trying to listen and not repeat people's takes, but I'm going to go off the basketball for a second. I know you're a Chiefs fan. I've been listening long enough to know you're a Chiefs fan. I imagine you've heard some of those fake rendition Taylor Swift breakup songs already.
It's outstanding.
Yeah, that's
some of my favorite stupid
for anything.
content. I just, we keep joking at SB Nation. We need to find ways to put Taylor Swift into our, I didn't write about Mark Cuban's comments yesterday just because I didn't want to. But I was really tempted to because it's so funny. It is so like Taylor is omnipresent.
Yeah, say what you will about Mark's comments, but it's like Jerry Jones says, he doesn't care if it's negative publicity or good publicity. Any publicity about the team is positive because it just generates clicks. So
Well, and then I
maybe for him
saw
to say something.
Travis Kelce actually responded to Cuban and said, "Give me a 10-day," which had me crack up. And then I completely forgot about this. Roger Sherman, formerly of The Ringer, shared a video from a Netflix series called Catching Kelce, where he's playing one-on-one basketball against some blonde chick and dunks on her. And I was like, I had no idea the dude was that athletic. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, he obviously with that comment he made the 10-day comment. He's pretty hip, he's young and hip, and he's pretty cool. He's one of the cooler dudes who could be, sitting in the seat he's sitting in with, megastar Taylor Swift coming after him. So it's just a content machine. Anyways, thoughts on probably something that's already been beaten like a drum, but
I don't mind.
I'm really high on the idea of Omax and Lively, just their energy alone, and us have already seen so much of Maxey, so much of Dwight, so much of these guys that's been on the team for 3 to 6 years already. You got to imagine that even Kid and Cuban are excited to see something different, much less us fans, So I think they're just gonna, the energy, the length, is gonna just force them on the court really quick. I don't think it's
so.
Gonna take. I don't think it's gonna take any time. Maybe he starts with Green or a more veteran presence, obviously. And I know I'm not really dropping any hot take here, but I'm just, I guess more or less, I'm just really bullish on those guys coming in and making an impact. Maybe it's just my naivety, being a Mavs fan, but I mean, I'm pretty objective, man. I'm a Cowboys fan, and it's, I'm my family's Cowboys fans, and they're all very Homer, and I love them as much as anybody in this room, but I'll also beat them up as worse as anybody will too. So I feel objectively bullish on these guys. So
that's good.
I don't know where you stand, but
I am bullish. I'm curious to see where a coach's proclivity to kind of keep younger players close, to either both protect them or limit, just basically limit, a rookie's ability to make mistakes. Kid's gonna have to fight off a lot of stuff. One thing Kid does every year, and this is almost every year. He did this with the Bucks. He had like a yearly speech about how difficult it is to win with young players. I hope he doesn't do that this year, but if the Mavericks are heading in the right direction and are still playing 500 basketball, I think a lot of us will take that because if you see building going on and you hope that at a certain point they turn the corner and start winning at a rate more than they're losing to where they could gain some ground in the standings, that's all you can really hope for. And I think it's good to be excited. Why not? Omax in particular, I think is just going to force his way onto the floor.
Yeah, no doubt. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, if he stays away from the Josh, remember when Josh was a rookie and he would just make some really, really boneheaded rookie mistakes, which we didn't fault him for at the time, but you could understand why he kind of got held off the court, especially under like a Carlisle regime where he, just didn't have the patience for that. So as long as he can stay away from some of them, just like outrageously silly. You remember Josh? Josh, when he was trying to play defense on some guys, they made him look silly. A pump fake would get him jumping out of his shoes like it was nobody's, like like he didn't belong on the court. And I think as long as he can just stay within himself and not try to overly prove, he belongs, I think just his length, like you said, length being a big weapon, and then already just being a defensive, force is going to get him on the court. So I'm excited for that. What else? I'm usually in a rush when I come on these things. I'm not a good speaker, and then
that's all right. You're doing great.
Typically, when I come on, it's the season. You got 20 people online, and I know you're trying to give people a 4 or 5 minute window to get off. 20 minutes for the idea. So I guess I'll end it at that, man. I don't want to waste the stage.
No, you're great. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you coming up and talking with us. We'll talk after games starting real soon.
Indeed, man. All right, take care.
All right. Let's see here. That was slightly biased talking NFL, so I switched over to Pod Maverick. Well, slightly biased is a lot better at this than I am. But that's okay. We're different people. And I would talk NFL if I could, but I don't really, don't want to bore you on that. I also don't ever get to watch because my son always wants to go do stuff on Sunday afternoons. Got a couple more things I wanted to touch on, but as always, you can join the pinned link, come up on stage, and we can hang out for a little bit. I did want to discuss, just because it's literally in the notes, the Mavericks new uniform. I'm going to pull it up here. Not new uniform, their City Edition uniform that came out. So let's switch over and take a little bit of a peek at that and discuss it for a second. Now, as a nearly 40-something guy, I don't necessarily think you want to be coming to me for fashion advice. But we have here a photoshopped version of what the Mavs City Edition is supposed to be for those of you who are listening on the podcast. If you haven't seen it yet, it is a black. Let me scroll to what the lighting makes it difficult. I'm assuming it's black, but the lighting sort of makes it almost look silvery black jersey with a blue trim, a sort of weird it's Mavs, not Mavericks, Mavs font. It kind of looks like what you would see like a girl like in high school doodling on a Trapper Keeper or something. And then 77 with what I think is a neon green outline around the blue. And then when you get into like the details of the jersey, it somehow gets even funnier, where I want to say in the bottom right corner here, where it's like it's where like they tell you the size of the jersey. Like Nike likes to put all these what they consider important details, and nobody ever fucking notices them. And it says in the bottom right corner, for all of Dallas, Fort Worth. And that was my favorite part, because it's not horrendous. It looks a little bit like a middle school AAU team jersey, but it's not like the if for anybody that remembers, and of course, why wouldn't you remember the jerseys? What was it? The spray paint, the weird, I can't even think of the right word. The graffiti. Sorry, gosh, that's how you know the day's getting away from me. The graffiti jerseys were truly awful. Those were not for me. I got the story behind them. I thought that was cool, but the execution of what the jersey was supposed to be was not it. That's the sort of jersey where in 20 years kids will talk about how cool it is, but I think it sucks. City Edition stuff is difficult because for me, it's either a huge hit or a huge miss. I really liked the white and gold from several years ago, though I know those were really, it's across the board weird. I loved last year's green and white, or green, like the old school green, and then like with the trim of blue. I really wish the Mavericks would do more, and that's where this one. more of that incorporated back into the jersey. Unfortunately, I don't know if they'll ever do like the 90s white uniforms ever again. They can only do throwback ones every certain number of years. They have some rules on it. I don't entirely understand it, but I don't know. It's the fact that they have to do a new city jersey every year. When they're wrong, they're awful. When they're great, I mean, when they look good, they look fantastic. Like the Retroflex stuff was so cool last year, and it just, everybody liked it. Stuff sold out like crazy. I just have a feeling that any of the peripheral gear, and I'm not just talking jerseys, I mean like the t-shirts, the sweats, that sort of thing, for this city edition is not going to do very well. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll have some cool stuff. Who knows? Definitely not for me. But that's okay. Not everything has to be for me. Clement in the chat says, "Stop it, Kirk. It's horrendous." Oh my gosh. Leo asks, who is their targeted audience? I mean, that's tough. That's where it's just like, I sometimes have a hard time being super critical about this, other than to say that I personally do or don't like something. Like, I'm not going to wear a jersey ever, probably. I'm an old person now. If you want to wear jerseys, that's fine. But it's like, I have no means to wear like a jersey out in public, so I'm not going to do it. That goes for pretty much all sports stuff. That's just me though. Okay, so we've been at it for nearly an hour, which is pretty impressive. Josh Bowl and I will be back on Tuesday to talk about, what are we going to do? We're going to probably cover more player previews with some of the more that we've been writing. Probably see if there's any more stuff worth talking about since training camp. So far, it's been mostly mundane. I mean, Tim Hardaway not knowing that he was coming off the bench is interesting, but it's not like Tim Hardaway was like a constant starter anyways. That doesn't seem like we talked about that already in the show. I'm sure there will be more stuff out there. Yeah, I don't know. And just to kind of throw this out there, since it's the tail end of the pod, I tend to not take on new writers during the season. We just have too much going on. Season hasn't started yet, though. So if you're at all interested in writing for MavsMoneyball.com, find my email address, my personal email address. It's somewhere on the website. I promise. If you look hard enough, you'll be able to find it. And we can talk and see what we can come up with. Just looking for people to help out here and there, that sort of thing. Otherwise, guys, have a great weekend, and we will talk soon. Go Mavs.